Hello everyone and welcome to Catching Up on JP Part 3, probably the most important part maybe of the entire summary, because now we're going to go over the two stories, one of which introduced the protagonists of Arc 2, the Kamihama Magia Union, and the other one introducing the, well, at least at the current point, the antagonists of Part 2, Promised Blood. So let's go right in with our first event, the Iroyachi login story. As it comes to happen after Arc 1 and Chapter 10, we find that many Magical Girl teams on some specific day, they are all heading together to some place where they would all meet up, and we also see Iroyachi and they are running late to the same place as well. On their way to make it over to that meeting spot, they come over Tsuruno, who jumps hug them, they come over Felicia, who is just in front of a store, wants to buy some stuff from Dikagong Bold stuff, of course. They also then bump into Sana, who is playing with a cat, although I don't know how cats are able to see her. They also then afterwards bump into Ui and unfortunately Toka and Nemu as well. And in general, this is all about just having each day being dedicated to a bunch of retellings of what happened in the past, a bunch of recaps, a bunch of just reminiscing about what happened with all of these characters. Then moving on, they bump into Team Kamori, and what is happening during all of this is that also Toka is explaining that this weird energy that was helping them beat Eve and Walpurgisnacht specifically, that energy came from another universe, and she can connect to that other universe via the Endless Mirrors. So she has headed into Endless Mirrors with Nemu, and she wants to set up some experiments to find out where those feathers came from, where that energy came from, and if they can use it somehow. Next up, they then go and they meet with Mitama and Kanagi as well, and they actually end up making it all the way to the meeting spot in the end. And there they find that basically all the other Meika of Kamihama are already there, and Hinano comes in and Hinano says that they still haven't found Aina, even though they're searching for her as much as they can. And we get the scene where Karin is actually there. She's now part of main story, yay. And it turns out that Karin was told about all the things that Aina did, but Karin doesn't want to believe that Aina did anything bad, and Karin herself also doesn't know where Alina is. And don't worry about that, there's going to be more about this Karin side of the story in Arc 2, where she's the main character. So then we get to the actual part of stuff where even more recap happens, but more importantly, they get to have this meeting where Iroyachi, they give a speech about all the stuff that has happened in the past and how they're going to move forward. It's a pretty bad speech, to be honest, but they want to announce that they are going to create this new union between all the Megoka, all in this entire city, and they call it the Kamihama Magia Union. And they also start floating with some wings in the back because they need to sell the Iroyachi unit. Yay! Crimson Resolve. This is a really long one that has some sort of quite a lot of complex stuff to it. So first off, let me introduce to you the city of Futatsuki. So in this city, there are many rival gangs. There always have been in the past, although there were times where there were singular gangs, then splitting up again and singular gangs again. And there's always been a lot of war going on between all these different gangs, and they're all gangs of magical girls, and the goons, of course, they all have magical girl goons as well. And the current situation that we have at the beginning of the story is that we have this really big gang called the Tigers that are led by Yuna. They have some Japanese name, but I'm using the actual English name now because that will be a lot better than just using the Japanese name all the time. So you have the Tigers, and they're led by the angry, also not that angry, just by Yuna. The two things that I just said right now, even angry, that's gonna happen later. But they're led by Yuna, and they also have the gang called the Dragons, led by Juri. And as it turns out, they actually both used to be one gang at some point, until the Dragons and Juri specifically, they grew a bit restless, they grew a bit dissatisfied with the situation in the city, and so they decided, hey, we're gonna make our own gang with blackjack and hookers, basically. And Juri also, she kind of sees herself as sort of the someone who wants to live up to Yuna and basically show Yuna that she can be better than Yuna, but she also has some bad blood between Yuna, and so there's a sort of rivalry going on between them. And by leading the Dragons to victory basically against the Tigers, she wants to rise above Yuna, and also she really, really wants to beat Yuna in a one-on-one because she was never able to do that in the past. So these are basically the two big gangs. The Dragons are a little bit bigger and more powerful in general than the Tigers, and there's also, however, a secret third gang that we're going to get to in just a second. It's important also to set up that currently in that city there is a scarcity of witches, because of course the witches during the Magus stuffs, all those witches, they went and left the city and they went over to Kamihama. But not just that, they also like to hunt Cubase, because a lot of the, if not all of the characters in this story, they know about becoming witches, so they decide to hunt witches. They hunt Cubase so that no more new magical girls would be created, so that no more new witches would be created, which of course on one hand, yeah, it does lead to a scarcity of witches, but they're doing it to protect magical girls basically, and to protect people as well, to not have to end up with that sort of fate. But now they're sort of in the situation where they have a whole bunch of magical girls and not a whole lot of grief seeds to go around, so of course they end up fighting each other over the scraps, and they also end up killing each other over the scraps as much as they can, and they use intrigues, they do spying tactics, there's a lot of double crosses going on, they're straight up battling between other characters, trying to get as many grief seeds as possible, many underhanded tactics, basically all that you can imagine, basically in a sort of war between all these different gangs to find who can get the most grief seeds to stay alive, I guess. So we begin the actual story with a character called Ao. And Ao, as it turns out, she leads the third hidden gang that I was talking about earlier, called the Snakes. And these snakes are made up, not actually of specifically their own gang members, but rather they're made up of gang members of the Tigers and the Dragons who have hidden themselves. They're basically spies, but they're all secretly part of the Snakes. And the idea behind the Snakes is that they're basically infiltrating both of these gangs. And at some point, when the time is right, they would strike and take over both of these gangs and basically unify them under one gang, the Snakes. So basically that's the idea behind the Snakes, kill both at once through spying tactics. Awesome. So Ao is the leader of that group, and she starts the entire story off by rescuing Hikaru from a gang of by a bunch of other gang members that want to hunt her for a grief seed that Hikaru has just gathered. And so Hikaru is of course very grateful to Ao for having rescued her, and so Ao says that, hey, you can join my gang, you can join the Snakes, and if you join us, hey, maybe I can give you, you seem to be a pretty good magical girl, actually I can give you something really important to do for me. So as it turns out, Ao is pretending to be a friend of Juri, who is the leader of the Dragons, to remind you guys, and she says we still don't really have anyone who is on the Tiger side who is really good friends with the leaders of the Tigers, with Yuna. So she says, hey, Hikaru, you can join us, but we want you to basically join the Tigers and befriend Yuna, so that you can spy on Yuna for us, so that we both have me spying on the leaders of the Dragons and you can spy on the leader of the Tigers, and then we can use all the information together to basically defeat both of them at once at some point. So then this is sort of the setup for everything, and then as it happens at some point, there's this rumor that gets started, not an噂, like an actual rumor that gets started, that the Tigers, they lost their horse. You don't need to know the horse at this point, just that it's a very important thing or whatever, and this is so important, such an important news, that the Dragons, they tell themselves, wait a second, the Tigers just lost their horse, perfect, time for us to start fighting, and they straight up declare war on the Tigers and say, we're going to fight you guys. So the two gangs, then they set up a battlefield. As it turns out, each of them are basically situated on one side of a river. So there's the river going in the middle, actually it's going like horizontally like this. And then on one side you have the Dragons, and on the other side you have the Tigers, and you have three bridges. You have the East Bridge, the Middle Bridge, and the West Bridge that basically connects these two sides. And they basically said, we're going to fight basically on these three bridges. And so both of these gangs, they set up a perimeter around these bridges and basically set up and just wait for battles to happen. However, not really anything happens for like 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, both sides just sort of stare at each other and nothing happens. And as it turns out, this delay was actually a cunning plan by one of Judy's confidants, actually both of Judy's confidants. Judy, once again, Dragon's leader, Ao and Ranka, who's another character who is part of the Dragons, like actually part of the Dragons and not a snake. And they wanted to use that time to gather more intel, because there have been a few rumors going around that maybe witches are about to come back to the city, but there's still not really anything about this rumor substantiated yet, so they wanted to gather more intel. However, they can't really find that intel, like at least conclusively enough, and they say, you know what, time to fight. So they give like two more days of leeway, and then they decide to have the big battle happen. However, during all of this, Ao and Hikaru, they still meet up in secret as part of the Snakes, and they exchange intel over what both of the sides are doing, and they decide on a plan to assassinate both Judy and Yuna when both of them meet up on the battlefield, and then they would be able to also, hopefully at the same time, defeat both of their armies by having Snakes spring into action in the middle of the battlefield and basically beating both sides down, and then they would be able to take control of everything. However, while they're talking about this, and before they can finalize that entire plan, they're sort of spotted by a gang member of the Dragons who recognizes that she used to be a member of an older group that doesn't exist anymore called the Bats. And the Bats are known for also doing all sorts of underhanded tactics, all sorts of spying, basically everything that the Snakes are doing right now, the Bats were known for. And so that former gang member of the Dragons, they wants to blackmail Ao with that information. However, they are able to stop that gang member and lock her up, and you actually get a choice here if you want to keep that person locked up, or if you want to set them free. If you set them free, you get a bad end, because the Dragons attack the Snakes and the Snakes just die. That sucks. There's actually a bunch of dead ends, but I'm not going to go over all of them, or even most of them, but I am going to mention sometimes maybe that there is a choice that could lead to a dead end. So then both the sides, they continue making strategies for the big battle. There's something going on with some weird magical stones that the Tigers are using for their advantage, but it doesn't really matter too much right now. However, let's go over the strategies just very, very quickly. You have on one side, on the Tigers, you have Yuna together with Hikaru, the Snake Spy, and you have Sakuya, who is also a confidant of Yuna. And on the other side, you have the Dragons with Juri, Ao, and Ranka. Once again, Ao is of course the Snake Spy, and Ranka is just a confidant of Juri. And so the battle begins in earnest. So the fight plan works as follows. On one side, we have Juri and Ao's teams on the East Bridge, or rather in general, both sides have sort of like small teams, small battalions that they're ordering around, and of course they're fighting alongside the battalions as well. So Juri and Ao's, they have some teams, and they lead them into against Sakuya's teams on the East Bridge, and they smash Sakuya's teams down. So East Bridge goes to the Dragons. Both teams seem to ignore the center bridge, because both teams know that the Tigers set up a trap there. So of course the Dragons go, yeah, we're not going to fall for that trap. And then on the West Bridge, we have Ranka's teams who are battling Yuna and Hikaru's teams, and they get the Ranka's teams get defeated. So on the west side, the Tigers are being successful. So one side, basically it's now 1-1, with one side winning one half of the battle and the other side winning the other half of the battle. So both of the teams, they sort of don't really get anywhere, and they decide to group up again, with the Dragons being slightly behind. However, as the Dragons are regrouping, the Tigers spring another one of their traps, like a trap that the other side didn't know about, into action. They have some sort of artillery set up, like not an actual physical artillery, like magic girls that can like shoot at a range. They have set those up, like basically they said every single magic girl can shoot at a range, come with me, and they have them ambush the Dragons while they are trying to regroup. And while they're being shot at, the rest of the Tigers then also come in, and they further drive the Dragons apart. So now the Dragons are being being ambushed by basically artillery and the rest of the Tigers, and being driven apart into multiple teams. And one of that team ends up being led by Juri, and then Juri takes that team and basically just pushes toward the center bridge, where she has spotted the enemy leader Yuna. And Yuna and Juri, they want to duke it out, and they want to just fight between them and see, hey, maybe if one side wins, then that side will have just won everything. It's kind of like that. However, as both of them face each other in battle, both Hikaru comes in and advises Yuna to fall back, and Ao also comes in and advises Juri to fall back, mostly because both of them are, of course, snakes. And the thing is, with the situation that the battle is currently going, both of them could assassinate both of the leaders. However, the armies are a bit further apart. They're like sort of spread across the battlefield, and the snakes realize that if they strike right now, they probably won't be able to defeat both armies at once. So they decide to have them fall back, maybe have them regroup a little bit, and then strike at a better time. So both sides, they sort of fall back. Yuna and Juri, they both fall back on the advice of their confidants. However, Yuna doesn't want the war to go on anymore. Yuna actually really wants to end the war. I might have painted a bit of a wrong image earlier when I said Yuna was both evil and angry, because at least for most of the story, she's kind of the opposite of that. She actually really just wants to minimize the amount of casualties. She doesn't want people to die. She wants the war to end, and she really does a lot to try and make sure that not too many people die. However, still a lot of people die, and so she still wants to end the battle right here and there, no matter what happens. So you actually get another choice here that can lead to a dead end. If you attack with your full force or just with a strike team, you want to attack with a strike team. So you take the strike team to basically follow Juri, and you say, I'm going to attack Juri again, and this time we're really going to settle it just between us two. However, now the situation is a little bit different, and now the snakes do indeed decide to attack. So all the snakes suddenly basically do the sort of thing where they rip off a mask like in the battle and go, haha, I was actually the bad guy the entire time. Although they don't have masks, they just start attacking their own guys basically, and no one knows what's going on. So there's suddenly this huge chaos going on with suddenly people attacking each other, and no one knows what's going on. And in reality, it's just the snakes enacting the plan, and the dragons get absolutely destroyed. The dragons have absolutely no idea what's going on. They get absolutely destroyed. Judy is not killed, but she is also struck down as well, and it seems like everything's going fine. However, on the Tigers' side, they're not taking any losses. In fact, the tigers are perfectly prepared for this sort of ambush. And also, Yuna just doesn't take any damage whatsoever. There's nothing happening there. What has happened? As it turns out, you know that horse that I was talking about earlier, that the tigers have lost, and that was really important to them? That was just a setup to get the dragons into a war, and also to lead the snakes to do something really bad, because as it turns out, Yuna was actually a complete mastermind, and Hikaru is the horse. So Hikaru was indeed spying on the snakes, acting like a snake herself, and is actually the best friend of Yuna. And no one knew about this because the horse was kind of a secret that was well kept. No one even knew that the horse was even a person. So Hikaru reveals that she's been spying on the snakes this entire time, so the snakes' attacks just fails, but the dragons still got destroyed by the snakes. So now the dragons are destroyed, now the snakes are kind of destroyed, and everyone just sort of retreats and backs off. And Yuna basically sees herself the victor. Yuna just has seen that, well, I've won basically at this point with both the dragons and the snakes completely destroyed. So this is how this first war ends, and this is the halfway point of this entire event and the setup for the second part. So after this, what happens is the tigers, they're doing fine, of course, they're doing totally fine, but both the snakes and the dragons, they've had to suffer many losses. Both the leaders of the snakes and dragons, both Ao and Juri, they're sort of licking their wounds, not doing too good, being a bit sad about everything that happened. And as we go and look at the tiger space, we see that Yuna, she had started this investigation I was talking about earlier into the numbers of how many witches are in the city, and that's where the rumor came from that maybe witches were coming back into the city. But they still hadn't found out enough, and so she wants to keep investigating this rumor. However, as it turns out, there was an attack on whoever was investigating the witch attack. So you can send out, it's another choice, you can send out Sakuya to go and help the investigator, which you have to do, otherwise you get a bad end. So you have Sakuya check out what's going on, and also, once again, it's being reinforced that Yuna just wants to make peace, so she really wants to figure out that indeed witches are coming back, so that she can tell everyone, hey guys, witches are coming back, we can have peace now, we don't need to fight anymore, we don't need war, everything is going to be fine, okay? So you can go and you need to investigate this rumor, and as you find out, the investigators, they were able to find out that basically they were able to find out everything that happened in Kamihama, that the Magus was happening, that there's this doppel system, and more importantly, they were able to find out that the Magus are responsible for drawing all of these witches to Kamihama, and that Kamihama in general, they were all responsible. They were the ones who were at fault for all these witches going over to Kamihama. And of course, Yuna kind of likes this information. However, if we look at meanwhile what happens with the dragons, in the dragon space, a lot of people are leaving the dragons. Like I said, they are the bigger of all of these gangs, but they're still bleeding members at this point because the dragons, of course, they know that they got basically destroyed at the end of that fight. So a lot of them are leaving. They've lost faith in their leader, Juri. And what happens is, though, Juri's confidant, like actual confidant Ranka, still hangs around because, as it turns out, Ranka was also once part of the Bats, but used to be bullied in the Bats or was taken advantage of. And in the end, Juri came and she basically freed Ranka from the Bats and basically said, hey, you don't have to be part of the Bats anymore, you can be part of my gang, yay. And Ranka is very grateful of that to Juri. Meanwhile, with the snakes, Ao has sort of given up on the snakes, basically, and said that, yeah, maybe we can just join the tigers, because the tigers are the strongest. They just want peace, so maybe we just join the tigers. However, before she can really think about anything, she notices that Ranka is nearby in the area. And the thing is, Ao really hates Ranka. Ao actually kind of wants to kill Ranka, because Ao also used to be part of the Bats, as I mentioned earlier. And in the Bats, Ranka actually used to bully the shit out of Ao, which Ao really, really hates. So Ao would really love to at least defeat, probably even kill Ranka. So, however, before she can go and basically do a sneak attack on Ranka for critical damage, she actually gets intercepted by Hikaru, who doesn't know what's going on. So the two of them, they just sort of go away to a sort of other place nearby, and Ao sort of gives up on the sneak attack, and they just sort of get into talking, and they still are to some degree friends. I mean, yeah, Hikaru basically was spying on her the entire time, but they're still sort of friends to some degree. So Ao, she talks about what she has in mind for the snakes, and sort of she kind of does want to join the tigers, and talks to this about Hikaru as well. And she still wants to get revenge on Ranka, though. She still cannot let go of this revenge that she wants to enact on Ranka. So she says, I'm going to join you guys, but only after I've gotten my revenge on Ranka. She really, really wants that. So, but at least she was able to convince most of the rest of her gang to join the tigers. Only like a handful of people left. So most of the snakes are now part of the tigers, and the snakes are basically gone at this point. So Ao also kind of somewhat joins the Tigers at this point, or at least befriends them. And Yuna says, "Hey, Ao, if you want to help us out, go over to the dragons." I mean, Ao used to be part of the dragons until she kind of revealed that she was a snake and was backstabbing the dragons until that horribly failed. So she wants Ao to go over to the dragons and maybe see if she can broker some peace. Maybe tell them like, "Hey, please just join the Tigers, okay? Please just everyone join the Tigers. That would be great." So as it turns out, it actually works. Yeah, actually, like a lot of more Dragons members join the Tigers again, and the Dragons are losing even more people, and they're no longer the biggest gang, and it seems like the Dragons don't have that much long anymore until they lose most of their members. Meanwhile, though, however, Hikaru is talking to Yuna, and she argues that they should probably stop hunting Q-base. I mean, yeah, it kind of sucks about having more, on one hand, more magic girls, more mouths to feed, and more people having a bad time, but more witches, we get more witches, right? That would help out quite a lot, right? But Yuna is like, no, we're not doing that. We're not sacrificing people for witches, even though they're killing each other all the time over grief seeds. But yeah, kind of double standards going on here. Yuna really wants to play the saint, even though, like I said, they're all killing each other anyway, and says, no, we're not going to stop hunting Q-base because we can't allow more people to have to suffer such a terrible fate. Probably also one thing to mention is that Yuna used to have a senpai who used to be a leader of a really big gang, but then that senpai turned into a witch, and that was a really, really tough time for Yuna, and she doesn't ever want to forget that, and so she doesn't want to see any more people turn into witches, basically. Not that she actually tries to do that in Arc 2 at some point, but don't worry about that. Double standards, don't worry about those right now. So back at the Dragon Space, however, Ao, after having brokered some sort of peace with the Dragons and convinced some of them to join back with the Tigers, she still hangs around because she still wants to find Ranka, who once again, let's not forget, is a confidant of Judy. So Ao really, really wants to find Ranka and have her revenge. However, she doesn't find Ranka, she only finds Judy, who's still a bit injured from the battle that happened recently. And so Judy actually goes to talking with Ao a little bit, and actually is a lot more mature than she is in any other scene, because Judy basically tells Ao to make peace with Ranka, to forget about their feud from the past and become friends again. And she also tells him like, hey, you shouldn't trust the Tigers. They might, you've seen that they basically use Hikaru to double cross us and everything. So or not just to double cross us, just cross us, cross the snakes at least. Anyway, so and Judy just says, you know what, you should join us again. We can be a team again, and let go of your hatred, basically. And also, one of the reasons why she says that is because she sees this Ranka versus Ao situation kind of being like her versus Judy situation, like her versus Yuna situation, sorry. But she also sees like her being this someone who has this revenge plot against this other character that she just can't let go, but she knows that she kind of should let go of that revenge plot. And then I can already tell a few scenes later that Judy is not going to let go of that revenge plot herself. However, you do have the choice, as in the situation as Ao, if you want to shake hands with Judy and let go of your hatred against Ranka and join the Dragons again, at least unofficially. Officially, you would still stay with the Tigers. Or if you want to refuse to shake hands and still hold on to the hatred for Ranka. In fact, you don't actually get a dead end immediately. Interesting enough, you don't get a dead end immediately. However, like 10 or so battles later, like way later, you will then suddenly get a dead end if you decide to shake hands here. And then you will just be told, instead of a narration, if you hadn't decided to shake hands like 10 battles earlier, you would not have gotten a bad end here. So you have to go back, not shake hands, and then go back to that battle, and then a new path will open up, which I think is rather interesting. There's also another situation, I think, another choice where that happens, not quite sure. But that's actually very interesting, and I don't think they ever did that again in any other branch event, sadly. So yeah, you basically have to refuse to shake hands and still persist that you want to kill Ranka as Ao. And so that scene sort of ends and Ao just leaves because you can't find Ranka. However, Judy decides that she still wants to find Yuna. She still wants to have that epic one-on-one Yuna with the Fire and the Flames in the background, with just the two of them. She really, really wants that. She gets a hard on for that. So she decides that she gathers the rest of her group troops, well, the few that are still around. She gathers all of them, and she basically has Ranka invite Ao over and says, hey, you know what, if you guys want to kill each other, fine, you can have a meeting. And they arrange a meeting between Ao and Ranka, and Ao, of course, doesn't want to go alone, so she brings Hikaru along, because, like I said, they're kind of friends now, and they want help go over to that meeting so that Hikaru can help Ao hopefully not get killed. In the meantime, though, they also send another invitation over to Yuna, basically just saying, it's basically disguised as just a bunch of dragons saying, hey, we want to talk to Yuna from the Tigers because we want to join the Tigers. Like, we are more people who want to join the Tigers. And Yuna still thinks that she's kind of victorious. She still thinks that's basically done and dusted, everything is done. So she just takes like 3 other guys with her and heads over to the meeting point, where of course there's a fucking ambush. She gets ambushed by like 10 people, 10 dragons, and she's immediately overwhelmed and realizes, damn, why was I so gullible thinking that I already had one? So yeah, some of the rest of the dragons, they ambush Yuna, and basically we have to leave off here for just a second, because meanwhile Ao and Hikaru, they also arrive at the destination where Ranka is, and Ranka just taunts the shit out of Ao and really is completely happy to taunt as much as she can against Ao. And the keen eye, the keen senses of Hikaru, however, pick up that there's a sniper, or at least some sort of long-range magical somewhere in the area, probably aiming at them, so they're in big danger. However, while Ranka keeps taunting, Ranka lets slip that Yuna is in big danger and is about to die, so she sort of gloats over that, how they basically actually somehow won now. So Ao says to Hikaru, you can go and save Yuna, make sure that she doesn't die, and I'm going to stay here and I'm going to basically have an epic one-on-one with Ranka, and hopefully somehow don't die with against the sniper. So Ao stays behind and fights Ranka, and as it happens though, however, something we didn't know, because Ao is actually a bit smarter than we gave her credit for, some of the other Snakes members that I said earlier didn't leave the group yet. They're still here. Snakes members suddenly ambush the entire site and take down every single Dragons member that was here, including the sniper, and so Ao gets to have her epic one-on-one against Ranka, and Ranka is kind of really sad now, because she kind of thought, wait a second, I thought the Snakes were gone. Yeah, the Snakes are still back, baby! And Ao completely wipes the floor with Ranka. However, Ao actually still sort of takes Judy's words to heart, and Ao spares Ranka, doesn't kill Ranka, and sort of while she spares Ranka, Ranka does apologize and says, I'm sorry, Ao, for all I've done, and they sort of make up, and they're friends again. Yay, friendship, woo! Just ignore all those dead guys we littered the entire battlefield with corpses just a few days earlier. Just forget about that for a second, but now we can be friends again. Yay! Meanwhile, back at the other scene, where Hikaru arrives just in time at the destination where Yuna was being ambushed, and Yuna was actually just about to turn into a witch, because she basically has her in Soul Gem Black. And don't forget, guys, Futatsuki City doesn't have a doppel system, so yeah, she was actually about to die. So Hikaru arrives, and she is able to protect Yuna just barely from the rest of the attacks. Hikaru then basically 1v10s the other gang members of the dragons, because Hikaru is actually kind of powerful in this story, not in other stories. And Judy kind of goes, you know what, fine, I wanted to have my epic 1v1 against Yuna anyway, and she's almost dead now, so you know what, you can take Yuna back, patch Yuna up again, and then I'll be back. 3 days from now, I'll be back, and I want my epic one-on-one with the fire and the flames, okay? So basically everyone retreats at this point, and now we have this ultimatum set by Judy that she's going to attack again. And she's basically going to keep the fight, the war running. I think the dragons might have gained some new members because of this as well, because probably the rumor spread that Judy completely destroyed Yuna, and that might have called some members back to the dragons. So yeah, Judy wants to fight again. So Yuna, she decides that since Judy will probably never ever back down, and the fighting is going to keep going on, and the war is going to keep going on, she just says, you know what, fine, everyone is going to just join the dragons, and then there's no war anymore. Okay, if we just all join the dragons, there's no war anymore, everything's going to be fine. However, Hikaru basically tells her, nope, we're not doing that, I'm not going to do that, and this is actually rather important, because Hikaru used to be basically the horse. She used to be like so incredibly loyal that she would do anything that Yuna said. However, this is like the first time that Hikaru ever went against one of Yuna's orders. And so Yuna basically is filled with new courage by seeing this dedication, this determination that Hikaru is showing. So Yuna decides, you know what, fine, if Judy wants this epic 1v1 duel, I'm going to give her an epic 1v1 duel. And Hikaru and Yuna basically says, we're going to gather every single magic girl in the entire city. We're going to bring them all to the central bridge, and we're going to have this epic one-on-one, me, Yuna, versus you, Judy, and we're just going to fight it out, and whoever wins everything. So they gather everyone, they have this epic one-on-one that was being described in Legends. And what happens then is Yuna actually uses this time, and she uses information that she has found earlier that witches are returning to the city. But not just that, she basically tells everyone there that Kamihama, the people of Kamihama, they took our witches, they took our gerbs, they took our witches. And so everyone hears this, and during this fight, Yuna, while talking about this, gets so angry, gets so enraged that she literally grows a horn of hatred. Literally grows a hate boner, okay? I'm not even making that up. Literally grows a horn out of her giant hatred for Kamihama, and almost goes to town on Judy until Hikaru sort of calms her down. And so at this point, since everyone is now going like, yeah, maybe actually Kamihama is the bad guy, maybe we should do something about that. Now everyone has decided, you know what, we're going to put down our weapons, we're going to put all of this feud behind us. They bring a Kyubey in front of them, and Kyubey basically says, yes, everything that Yuna has said is true. Yuna did not lie to you. Kamehama really is kind of at fault for everything. I can help you get to Kamehama if you want to. And so they decide to stop hunting Kyubeis in return for Kyubei's help to get to Kamehama easier. And they all three of them, Ao, Yuna, and Yuri, they all form a blood pact between them, saying that now there's truce between the gangs. They've now formed one alliance, promised blood, and they're going to go over to Kamehama and kill the shit out of everyone. And I guess also take over the doppel system for themselves. And that's basically how that story ends. They're going to kill shit and take doppel systems. Yeah, that was actually a pretty cool story, pretty cool event. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time.